Hello, and welcome to the show. I am Pastor Frankie Leggett III, and I am your host. Our topic for today is why did many Seventh-day Adventists vote for Donald Trump? So, let me add some context as to why I even raised the question. I am a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, and I have been privileged to pastor in the church of my youth and the church that I absolutely love. I've been privileged to pastor for 42 years now. But the fact of the matter is that I am absolutely baffled at Seventh-day Adventists, particularly white Seventh-day Adventists, and the way that they have voted over the last 10 years. I'm baffled at my church, especially because of what we believe prophetically, which is something that I will address at the very end of this broadcast. See, the fact of the matter is this. The more I see, the more I question. And the most burning question of all is this. Why did many Seventh-day Adventists, especially many white Seventh-day Adventists, vote for Donald Trump? 3 times, no less. Now, here's what I understand. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is a very conservative church. And because of that, the leadership of the church, which has always been predominantly white, notwithstanding the fact that this church is black and brown all over the globe, but the leadership of the church has always been and tends to lean more towards, as well as many of the constituents, particularly the white Seventh-day Adventist constituents, tends to lean and vote Republican. That's a fact of life in the Adventist church. And in addition to that, based on my experience, most white Seventh-day Adventists are Republicans. And I get some of the reasons. I really do. Namely, abortion. Many, if not most, Seventh-day Adventists like myself are pro-life. There's the issue with same-sex marriage. Most Seventh-day Adventists, again, like myself, believe that a marriage constitutes a relationship between a man and a woman. That's never going to change. So I get the basic reasons why Adventists identify and or traditionally vote for Republicans. But this is where my understanding ends. Here's why. Donald Trump is not your traditional Republican politician. He is not. He is the exact opposite of everything we believe in as a church. And yet, many white evangelicals and many white Seventh-day Adventists still vote for him. And the question that I ask is why? I cannot wrap my brain around the fact that God-fearing people, notwithstanding the denomination, that God-fearing people would embrace and endorse a lewd and lascivious political candidate like Donald Trump. I cannot wrap my brain around it. But Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. can. And on a recent broadcast with Stephanie Rule on MSNBC, Dr. Glaude doesn't just speak from the perspective of Americans voting for a known convicted felon, but he especially addressed the issue as to why many white Americans voted for a known convicted felon. And that would include any and all white Christians that knowingly voted for a known convicted felon. And Dr. Glaude dismisses the notion that it was about economic populism, or it was just about food prices too high, eggs and milk and whatever else too high. He dismisses all of that foolishness. He summarily wades through all of that and gets to the crux of the matter. And he identifies what white America refuses to address to this day. He gets to the root cause of why white folks have embraced Donald Trump and why he is a cult figure, the likes of which we've never seen in a United States president previously. So, take a look at this most important clip by Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr.
We can grab the P.
I think that a lot.
They voted for this guy.
I'm not defending it, but I think there are tons of people that don't pay attention to, and I'm not defending it, don't pay attention to politics at all. But while we live in the most prosperous country in the world, people are saying life's not fair. I'm not doing well. My son's still living in the basement. I can't seem to get a job. I don't like the status quo. I'm voting for something else. And he was the person.
Love you to life.
I love you.
But I do not believe that. I cannot believe that. And the reason I think you believe it is because you don't want to believe that that's what's really motivating them. It's always the case. People don't want to believe what the country actually is, because if they believe it, they're going to have to confront what's in them. I don't believe that. They voted for a crook, a person who they know is stealing from, just doing everything to undermine the so-called country that they love. And then they're telling us the BS that it's economics. We know that's not true.
We know it's not true. White America doesn't want to address the fact that they're racist. They don't want to address that fact. They don't want to address slavery. They don't want that guilt. They don't want to address the fact that they are white supremacists. And that they deal with people purely based on the color of their skin. They don't want to address any of those issues. America always is, always has, and always will be a racist nation. It's a fact of life, but they don't want to look themselves in the mirror and come to that conclusion. So they come up with all of this other ancillary foolishness. So no, they did not vote for him because of rising prices. Food prices and gas prices. It's about something far more deeply ingrained than that. He addresses the issue yet again. Take a look at this clip.
Where we may be singular is our a refusal to acknowledge them. And the legends and myths we tell about our inherent, goodness. To hide and cover and conceal so that we can maintain a kind of willful ignorance that protects our innocence. See, the thing is that when the Tea Party was happening, we were saying, pundits, oh, it's just about economic populism. It's not about race. When people knew, social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing, that they were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials, that the country wasn't quite feeling like it was a white nation anymore. And people were screaming from the top of their lungs, this is not just simply economic populism. This is the ugly underbelly of the country.
It's the ugly underbelly of the country. It's about who we are as a country. Let's face it. I just said it, and I'm going to repeat it. America is a racist nation. It has always been, and it will always be, because most white people in this country believe and has always believed that America belongs to them exclusively. As if they founded it. And they did not. There were people here when they got here. People of color were here when they got here. And that's why the Tea Party was formed, out of response to America voting for a black man as president. That's why the Tea Party was formed, because of Obama. The fact that Obama was voted president of these United States, the fact that a black man was put in a White House, was unconscionable for many people. For most white folk, or many white people at the very least, that was a bridge too far for them. Now, it was not all white people. It was not. Because Obama could never have been elected just by the black vote. It could never have happened. No, white people. I was at some of those rallies. I was at the rally, September 2008 in Orlando, with him and Hillary were campaigning together. I was at those rallies. I saw those young white people, males and females, energized, excited. I was at those rallies. I saw those young white people excited because they saw in him change that they could believe in. And they saw America changing. And for whatever reason, America refuses to accept and embrace the fact that America is changing demographically. Now, there's one more clip that I want you to see. And the larger context of this clip is that ever so often America is presented with an opportunity to change, to evolve, to grow, to improve. But every single time, America has failed to do the right things in those moments. Excuse me. From the Emancipation Proclamation all the way to today, every time we've made civil rights gains, every time there was a movement or policies passed that improved the welfare and well-being of black and brown folks, white folks, and always Republican, came behind that movement and erased the gains that we made every time without fail. And so now I want you to listen again to Dr. Glaude, who couches it and the striking and disturbing metaphor he uses to describe white America. Check out this clip.
When we have faced the kind of moral reckoning we now face, we have doubled down on our ugliness. At every turn, when a new America is about to be born, the umbilical cord of white supremacy has been wrapped around the baby's neck, choking the life out of it. We have cleaved to this idea of white America and left bodies in the wake. I came here to tell you the truth, Chautauqua. We've left bodies in the wake.
The umbilical cord of white supremacy. Every time America tries to go to the next level, to live up to its creed, that we hold these truths, that all Americans are created equal and are endowed with certain inalienable rights, amongst which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And every time America attempts to live up to that creed and create liberty and freedom for all, the umbilical, Dr. Glaude says, the umbilical cord of white supremacy wraps its cord around the baby's neck and chokes it out. So permit me to shift our focus from America as a whole to the Seventh-day Adventist Church in particular, of which I am a part, the church of my childhood, the church that I love, the church that I've served for over 4 decades and continue to serve to this day. And permit me to ask one question of my church that I love and serve. Why didn't many Seventh-day Adventists, especially many white Seventh-day Adventists, vote for Donald Trump? Now, I'm forced to admit that we can no longer look at the church as a whole and see glaring instances of overt racism practiced by the Seventh-day Adventist Church the way overt racism used to be practiced by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That's a historical fact. All right? Nobody can deny that fact. It's a part of our historical record. But corporate racism in the Seventh-day Adventist Church today is far more subtle, but nevertheless, it is still present. It is just harder to detect. It's because we are a nation that, and the reason why the overt racism has disappeared is because we are a nation that now believes in being politically correct. Consequently, the Seventh-day Adventist Church was forced to discontinue its overtly racist practices. However, excuse me, because the Adventist Church has never publicly apologized for its racist history, therefore many individual white Seventh-day Adventists have never surrendered their racist ideologies because they were never required to, because the leadership of the church never led in this area. They've never apologized. And the leadership has not changed to a certain extent, at least not verbally. Therefore, the individual members and the constituents have not done the right thing. Leadership must lead so the membership can follow. So why did many Adventists, especially white Adventists, vote for Trump, knowing that he was a convicted felon, and had he been just a regular American citizen, he would have served time? And we should all understand that. He would have been in prison. Why did many white Seventh-day Adventists vote for a man that is morally bankrupt and voluntarily grab women by their private parts and then brag openly about it? Why would many white Adventists vote for a man that lies incessantly and is an overt racist? Why would they vote for a man that has every intention of becoming a dictator and never leaving office ever again? Why would they vote for an incredibly flawed man like that? As far as I'm concerned, and this is subjective, but I can and I will back it up with facts. The answer is that point number one, I've got 2 points I want to share with you. Point number one is this. Many white Seventh-day Adventists continue to have racist ideologies and racist tendencies themselves. And anyone who knows anything about the Seventh-day Adventist Church knows that we've had a history of racism in our church. But what many don't know is that in the 2000s, around the year 2005, 2006, while General Conference employees and North American Division employees were sharing the GC building together, there were a number of white employees that displayed Confederate flag paraphernalia in their cars and in their cubicles and in their offices. Confederate paraphernalia. In fact, it was so bad that my friend that worked in the building in a specific capacity called a race diversity summit, the first one in the church's history, to sensitize the work staff to the fact that that type of behavior was off limits. In addition to speaking with my friend who called that summit and speaking with her directly, I also spoke with my mentor and former president, Elder Alvin Kibble, who confirmed these same facts to me from his mouth to my ears, that Confederate flags were proudly being displayed in the parking lot and in their cubicles in the GC building in the 2000s. The Confederate flag. The Confederate flag. It represents the exploitation of my people. It represents that nearly one half of the country seceded from the Union in about 1860, 1861, and went to war to ensure that my people would remain enslaved so that they could continue their way of life, which was built on the backs of my enslaved people. They went to war. They were willing to fight and die to ensure that my people remained in slavery. That's what that flag represents. And just 19 to 20 years ago, white Seventh-day Adventists in the General Conference building was still displaying Confederate paraphernalia. Are you serious? Now, to counterbalance that, a few years ago, the president of the Lake Union attended the Lake Region camp meeting, and he apologized for the racism perpetrated against Black and brown Seventh-day Adventist people, Seventh-day Adventists in particular. I truly commend him for that, because he did not have to do it. He chose to do it. I commend him for that. However, as far as I'm concerned, that is still not good enough. The General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists needs to apologize for the racism that was practiced by this church, not just here in North America, but across the globe. Excuse me. I'm still getting over cold and flu that I had a week ago. For example, I've been told by South Africans and friends of mine and former members of mine that the South African government patterned much of their apartheid practices by watching the racist practices of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in South Africa. Did you hear what I just said? South Africans that were living in South Africa at the time said the South African government looked at the Seventh-day Adventist Church and saw how racist and hateful it was, and patterned its apartheid racist practices, and borrowed their practices from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in South Africa. How disgusting. And then we refer to ourselves as the remnant people of God. How disgusting. South Africa is the poster child for global racism in the Adventist Church. And the South Africans to whom I spoke witnessed Adventist racism firsthand, so they know whereof they speak. So let's fast forward to today. Some 20 years later, and racism is still a fact of life in the Seventh-day Adventist Church today. You know what it's called? It's called white flight. I've spoken on this issue a number of times previously on this podcast. You see, we used to refer to state conferences, in the Black Adventist Church, we used to refer to state conferences as white conferences. Why? Obviously, because they used to be white. It's not the case anymore. You have to refer to them by their names today, because they're not white anymore. Just in my area. I live in Pennsylvania. Look at the Greater New York Conference. At one point, it truly was a white conference. And today, there are very few white Adventists in those churches in the Greater New York Conference. I've attended some of their functions. That conference is populated by people of color. Why? Because when we move in, white Adventists move out. And please, do not insult my intelligence and say that it exclusively has to do with worship. White folks have been doing this forever, even in context outside of the church. In fact, this is not even confined to the Adventist church. It was Martin Luther King who said back in the 60s that he said the most segregated hour is 11 o'clock in this country, is 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. He obviously wasn't talking about Adventist churches. So it's not confined to Adventism. I'm sorry. I failed to put my phone on mute. So, this is not just a white Adventist issue. This issue is pervasive throughout Christianity. But I'm just talking about my church. I can't worry about everybody else's church. But it's not confined to the church, to the Adventist church or any other church. It's not confined to that. Let me show you why. In communities all over the country, all over America, when people of color increase beyond 30 to 40% in a community, in a neighborhood, white people become uncomfortable and they move out. It's a fact of life that has been going on since emancipation. And so when you refuse to worship with black and brown people and you refuse to live in the same community as black and brown people, and when you display Confederate paraphernalia, guess what? Those are viewed as racist ideology, habits, and tendencies. It just is. So I circle back to the question. Why did many Adventists vote for Trump? Particularly, why did many white Seventh-day Adventists vote for Trump? And the answer by now should be clear. When Obama was elected the 44th president of the United States, it was a bridge too far for many white people, particularly white conservatives and white Republicans. The Tea Party was birthed into existence as a direct consequence of Obama's election. Trump himself admits the fact that he became president because we elected a black man in the office. The Tea Party members, along with social scientists, were declaring that America is changing. Social scientists understood that America, because of its shifting demographics, was shifting away from whiteness to a far more multi-ethnic and multicultural experience. And here's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a fact of several hundred years of declaring to the world in lyrics like these. Bring me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send me the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden shore. That's what America has said to the world. The world listened and the world came. And now white America is uncomfortable. White America is terrified that they're losing their country because social scientists have declared that by 2042, white America will cease to be America's #1 ethnic group in this country. Because of this, in 2016, Trump became the champion of white America. Trump became the chosen one. Consequently, Trump was chosen to preserve and protect whiteness, which is exactly what he's doing. That's why many white Adventists voted for him. They need him to continue employing the wrecking ball to destroy affirmative action and DEI. They need him to protect and preserve whiteness by shifting the ethnic balance in this country back in favor of whiteness by deporting black and brown people. These policies are not about balancing the budget. It's these policies, these draconian policies by Trump and Elon Musk are not about creating small government. It's about permitting two racists, Trump and Musk, to make America white again. That's why it's happening. The second reason why many white Adventists voted for Trump is point number two. And I truly do believe this because it seems that this is obviously the case. It appears to me that many white Seventh-day Adventists are white first, and they are Seventh-day Adventist Christians second. Wow. My brother-in-law, John Webb, would declare that that statement is hard, but fair. Let me give you another explanation that makes sense. For Seventh-day Adventists to vote for a president that is immoral, corrupt, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, and misogynistic is clear evidence to me that they are white first and Seventh-day Adventist Christians second. Clearly, their Adventism takes a backseat to their whiteness. Clearly, their whiteness makes them feel privileged, while their Adventism makes them feel marginalized. Their whiteness puts them in the majority, at least for now, but their Adventism puts them in the minority. So it's obvious to me, and if no one else but me, but it's obvious to me that the whiteness of white Seventh-day Adventist Christian supersedes their Adventist Christianity, and it is far more important. That in itself speaks volumes about the state of the Adventist church today, a church that I've served proudly for 42 years and counting. So let me explain the notion that their whiteness exceeds their Adventism. So when you look at it, Revelation chapter 13, verse 11, it says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Now, this is a passage that Seventh-day Adventists have been preaching for approaching 200 years of our existence. We've all known that prior to the second coming of Christ, that America, represented by this two-horned beast, would change let me start over. We've all known that prior to the second coming of Christ, America, represented by the two-horned beast that looks like a lamb, would ultimately begin speaking like a dragon. We've all known that. We've all known that. We've preached that a gazillion times. In fact, we still preach that. We've known prophetically that America would change its nature and do a major about-face, because that is exactly what the prophecy predicted would happen. And the moment that Trump came down the escalator and began the primaries, we saw the violence erupt. We watched in horror as the racial hatred climate was turned up dramatically. We watched with shock and awe as he turned blacks against whites and turned back the racial clock and removed all the gains that we had made as a country. And he still continues to do so with his attack on DEI and on all things black. For white Seventh-day Adventists to know what we teach prophetically about Revelation 13 and then go out and vote for a man who would perfectly fulfill the prophecy we all know would be fulfilled as one of the signs of the nearness of the second coming of Christ, for me, that is proof positive that their whiteness exceeds their Adventism. Their whiteness exceeds their Adventist Christianity. Therefore, I'm appealing to all Seventh-day Adventists everywhere. My first appeal is for the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists to apologize for the racism that this church permitted and practiced across the globe. It was a global practice of racism that was not confined to the North American division here in the United States of America and Canada. My next appeal is for Black and brown Seventh-day Adventists to mandate that the General Conference apologize for its racist history and practices. My voice cannot be the one voice in the alone in the wilderness. Ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who look like me, and for those of you who don't look like me, but you believe in righteousness and right doing, we must all collectively lift our voices against our racist history and past. So lift your voices. Require your conferences. Require your conference and union officials to raise the issue on your behalf. Use your power and your influence to get things done. My final appeal is to white Seventh-day Adventist Christians. I'm appealing to you to look in the mirror and confront any racist thoughts, practices, and habits that might exist. Here's why it is imperative for you to do so. My favorite author says that earth is the dressing room for heaven. I believe that with all my heart and soul. And we are preparing for heaven right now. There will be no racism or segregation in heaven. And if you are a racist or segregationalist, or if you are a white Seventh-day Adventist Christian nationalist, you will not be going to the heaven that I'm going to. Consequently, your salvation is in jeopardy. So I need you, and I want you, and I'm asking you to look in the mirror and confront this issue. Stop sweeping this issue under the rug as if nothing ever happened. And I pray to God that Seventh-day Adventists get their acts together. And I pray that white Seventh-day Adventists address their racist ideologies and tendencies. I pray to God that they do so, because if they fail to do that, then many white Adventists are going to lose their souls over foolishness. And racism is foolishness. And if that is the case, for many white Adventists, earth will become, if earth is the dressing room for heaven, and I believe that it is. If earth is the place where we prepare to go to heaven, and that preparation must take place, if that is the case, for many white Adventists, earth will have become their paradise. Because if they continue their offensive practices, habits, beliefs, and thoughts about people of color, then earth will be the one and only paradise they will ever experience. And I do not want that for you. God doesn't want that for you. And you shouldn't want that for you either. We can and we must do better as a church and as a people. In conclusion, I want to thank my producer extraordinaire, Lorraine Edwards, for the excellent job that she always does. And finally, if you've enjoyed this broadcast, this podcast, please, I'm asking you to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and share these podcasts with family and friends and neighbors and coworkers alike, so that you can be alerted every time we upload a new broadcast every Monday morning. Thank you for hearing and participating and supporting this channel. So until next time, be blessed. I'll see you then.